I was 9 years old, standing in the aisle of an airplane at 30,000 feet, holding my little brother while he struggled to breathe, and the adult in charge wasn't reaching for oxygen or help, she was reaching for control. She looked at me like I was the problem and said loud and sharp, "Sit down right now or you'll be removed from this aircraft." And I remember thinking, even through the panic, wow, this is really happening. Yeah, that happened. And to understand how a kid ends up in that moment, you have to rewind a little back to when I still believed adults automatically did the right thing when it mattered. We were at the airport a couple hours earlier, one of those busy mornings where everyone's half awake and half annoyed, rolling bags over tile, arguing with screens that say delayed like it's personal. My little brother Ethan was 6, pale, quiet, that soft wheeze in his chest that only people who live around asthma really notice. I was sitting on the floor reading him a comic book, doing the voices way too dramatically because if I could make him laugh, he breathed a little easier. I'd learned that early. Laughing helped him relax. Relaxing helped his lungs. It was just something I knew, like tying shoes or checking both ways before crossing the street. Our dad was a few feet away on the phone, pacing, doing that thing adults do when they're trying to stay calm but failing quietly. Construction job, emergency call, all that. When he hung up, I saw it in his face before he even said it. He knelt down and told us he couldn't make the flight. Not this one. The appointment Ethan had waited months for couldn't be missed, though, so we were flying alone. Unaccompanied minors. Paperwork done. Aunt waiting on the other side. He looked at me and asked if I could take care of Ethan until we landed. And I didn't even think about it. I just said yes. Of course I did. I always did. I didn't know then that yes was about to cost me something. Boarding felt normal at first. Ethan was excited about the plane, about seeing clouds up close. I held his hand down the jet bridge, telling him we'd fly through cotton candy skies like in cartoons. But the second we stepped into the cabin, the mood shifted. There was this senior flight attendant standing near the front, perfect uniform, perfect smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When she saw us, her expression changed just a little, like a math problem that didn't add up in her head. A black girl leading a white boy. She stopped us, bent down to Ethan, all sweetness and concern, asking where our parents were. When I answered calmly, politely, the way kids are taught to, her tone flipped. Suddenly, it was suspicious. Documentation, authority. Questions that felt less like procedure and more like interrogation. Another flight attendant confirmed everything on his tablet. Our names, our seats, our status, all correct. She waved us through, but not before leaning in and telling me she'd be watching. Not watching like protecting. Watching like waiting. My stomach tightened. I'd heard that tone before. Teachers, store clerks, security guards, you know what I mean. That tone that says, I've already decided who you are. I got Ethan's settled seatbelt on inhaler in the pocket right in front of me. He pressed his face to the window, smiling, fogging it up with his breath. I smiled back, but I could hear the wheeze getting sharper, tighter. Across the aisle, an older woman noticed too. She leaned over, gently introduced herself, told me she was a retired nurse, pediatrics. She didn't judge, didn't pry. She just said, "If you need anything, let me know." I nodded. I didn't know how much that would matter later. Takeoff was loud and thrilling. Ethan laughed as the ground fell away, and for a moment I let myself hope. Maybe the pressure wouldn't bother him. Maybe the inhaler would be enough. Maybe this would just be a story we told later. 15 minutes after we leveled off, that hope cracked. Ethan started coughing. Not a normal cough. The bad one. The one that meant his airways were tightening. I grabbed the inhaler. 2 puffs. Slow. He did everything right. It didn't work. His breathing got shallow. His lips started turning that scary blue-gray color you never forget once you've seen it. I pressed the call button, hard. The younger flight attendant came quickly, knelt down, saw Ethan, and his face changed. I told him everything in one breath. Asthma. Inhaler not working. Lips turning blue. He said he'd get the senior attendant. And when she came back, she didn't rush. She looked annoyed, like this was an inconvenience. She asked what the problem was in that flat voice adults use when they've already decided it's not serious. I told her. Again, he can't breathe. He needs help. She leaned down, spoke to Ethan in this fake sweet voice, asking if he was really sick or if I was causing drama. Drama. That word burned. When Ethan whispered that I was his sister, she straightened and looked at me like she'd caught me in a lie. She said it was concerning that a child like me was claiming responsibility for someone clearly not related. I felt my face heat up. I told her he was my stepbrother. She leaned in close and said she'd seen girls like me before. manipulative, attention-seeking. She told me to sit down and stop disrupting her cabin or she'd have security waiting for us when we landed. Girls like me. I was 9, but I knew exactly what that meant. Around us, people were watching. Some uncomfortable, some pretending not to see. Ethan's breathing got worse. That high whistling sound filled the space around us. The nurse across the aisle stood up, identified herself, said this was respiratory distress and he needed oxygen. The flight attendant shut her down, too threatening to label her disruptive. And that word did its job. The nurse hesitated, sat back down. Not because she didn't care, but because planes are weird little dictatorships and everyone knows it. Ethan started to panic. Panic makes asthma worse. I knew that, so I did the only thing I could think of. I held his hand and sang. Soft, shaky, a lullaby our mom used to sing when we were sick. People started really paying attention then. A man leaned over and asked if Ethan was okay. I told him no. They won't help. I pressed the call button again and again. The younger attendant came back clearly torn, went to argue with his supervisor, came back defeated. That was when I stood up because Ethan couldn't lie back anymore. He needed to be upright, gravity, anything. I wrapped my arms around him and held him, Ethan, tight. The senior attendant came storming back, face red, now shouting that this was my final warning, that I was disrupting the flight, that I would be arrested. Arrested. I looked up at her, tears everywhere, and something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped in